the rain falls softly outside, it carries with it whispers of the past, stories of lives shattered, secrets buried, and crimes that refuse to stay silent. Welcome to Shadows of the Past, where we unravel the darkest corners of human nature, peeling back the layers of true crime with a lens of suspense and mystery. Tonight, in Volume 25, we bring you 9 chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts long after the rain stops. Each story is a descent into the abyss, a puzzle of motives and malice told to lull you into a restless sleep. Settle in, dim the lights, and let the shadows guide you. Our first story takes us to the streets of Kunming, China, where a man's rage and a gang's brutality left a trail of blood that shocked the nation. Part 1, Yang Telingyong and the Kunming Crime Spree. In the late 1990s, city of Kunming, nestled in China's Yunnan province, was a place of bustling markets and quiet evenings where life moved at the rhythm of routine. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, a darkness was brewing, a darkness named Yang Telingyong. Born in 1959 in the small town of Chong, Telingyong was a troublemaker from the start. As a boy, he roamed the streets, picking fights, stealing from neighbors, and shunning the classroom. His parents, desperate to tame his wild spirits, saw his sturdy frame as a ticket to discipline. At 17, they sent him to the military, hoping the rigid structure would forge him into a man of honor. For a time, it seemed to work. Telingyong returned hardened, disciplined, and ready for a new chapter. But the shadows within him were only dormant, not gone. By his mid-20s, Telingyong had landed a job as a police officer at the Kunming Railway Bureau's East Station. It was a position of respect, a chance to serve and protect. Yet Telingyong was no hero. He was reckless, often absent from his post, and quick to clash with colleagues. His superiors, frustrated by his defiance, transferred him to prison duty, a role he saw as a humiliating demotion. The resentment festered. One fateful day, a heated argument with his leadership pushed him over the edge. Words turned to shouts, and Telingyong's temper cost him everything. He was fired, cast out into a world that no longer saw him as a protector, but as a failure. The rejection burned deep, twisting his view of society into something sinister. If the world wouldn't give him respect, he would take it. By force. By 1996, Telingyong was adrift, a man without purpose, nursing his grudges in the underbelly of Kunming. It was here, in a haze of cigarette smoke and cheap liquor, that he reconnected with an old military comrade, Sha Lin. Lin was no stranger to the dark side. He had carved out a life of crime, masterminding a fraud scheme that left him dripping in wealth, cars, designer clothes, and a penthouse that mocked Telingyong's empty pockets. Envy took root. Lin, sensing Telingyong's hunger, offered him a taste of the life he craved. Together, they formed a gang, a 7-man crew of misfits bound by greed and violence. Lin's brother, a handful of trusted friends, and Telingyong's own cousin joined the fold. They were a brotherhood of outcasts, and Telingyong, with his police training, brought a chilling edge to their schemes. Their first crimes were small, car thefts, petty robberies, the kind of hustle that kept the cash flowing. But small wasn't enough for Telingyong. His time as a cop had taught him how to bend the system, how to wear a mask of authority. The gang began impersonating police officers, armed with forged documents, stolen uniforms, and handcuffs that gleamed with menace. They would stop cars on lonely roads, flash badges, and demand compliance. While victims, trusted in the uniforms, never saw the betrayal coming. Wallets, jewelry, anything of value, it all became theirs. But theft alone couldn't sate their appetite. The thrill of power, of holding lives in their hands, awakened something darker. On April 6, 1997, the gang crossed a line from which there was no return. Under the cover of night, they targeted a Jeep parked outside a quiet Kunming suburb. The owner, a middle-aged businessman, was no match for their savagery. They beat him without mercy. His cries swallowed by the darkness and left his body crumpled in a ditch. The Jeep was theirs, but the act of killing had unlocked a new hunger. Telingyong, once a guardian of the law, now reveled in breaking it. The gang's crimes grew bolder, their methods more brutal. They targeted the wealthy, businessmen, couples, anyone who flashed signs of prosperity. A stolen Type 54 pistol, taken from a murdered security chief, became their signature. Each robbery ended in bloodshed, each victim a witness silenced forever. Their reign of terror escalated in April 1998, when they committed an act so brazen it shook the nation. Two police officers, Wang Xiaosong and Wang Junbo, were ambushed while on patrol. The gang, dressed as fellow officers, lured them into a trap. The officers, trusting their supposed comrades, never had a chance. Bullets tore through the night, and two heroes fell. The murders sent shockwaves through Kunming, sparking a nationwide manhunt. The police, humiliated and enraged, vowed to bring the killers to justice. But Ten Young and his crew were ghosts, slipping through the city's cracks, their crimes meticulously planned. They disposed of bodies with chilling efficiency, renting remote farms where pigs and dogs devoured the remains, leaving no trace for investigators to follow. But the gang's victims were not just strangers. In one horrific case, they targeted a couple, luring them with promises of a business deal. The husband was shot point blank, his wife tortured before joining him in death. Their bodies, like so many others, vanished into the void. From 1997 to 2000, the gang's tally grew. 19 murders, countless robberies, and a city gripped by fear. Tian Yang, once a man scorned, had become a predator, his hatred for society carved into every crime scene. But even the cleverest predators make mistakes, and the gang's unraveling began with a single careless act. In early 2000, a gang member named Chai Glai made a fatal error. He attempted to sell a stolen Motorola phone, unaware that its signal could be traced. The phone, reactivated, pinged a tower, drawing police attention. Glai was arrested, and under the weight of interrogation, he cracked. Names, dates, crimes, he spilled it all, exposing the gang's 3-year spree. The revelation was staggering. 19 murders, a trail of stolen goods, and a web of deception that implicated Ten Yang as the linchpin. The police moved swiftly, rounding up the 7 men in a series of dawn raids. Ten Yang, defiant to the end, showed no remorse, his eyes cold as steel as he was led away in chains. The investigation uncovered more than just bodies. It revealed a miscarriage of justice that added another layer of tragedy. Du Paiyu, the husband of one of the murdered officers, had been wrongfully convicted of her death, languishing in prison for years. Tian Yang's arrest set him free, but the scars of his ordeal remained. The case, now a national sensation, laid bare the cost of unchecked rage and the fragility of trust. On October 25, 2000, the Kunming Intermediate People's Court delivered its verdict. All 7 gang members, including Ten Yang and Lin, were sentenced to death. On November 17, 2000, they faced the firing squad, their empire of blood reduced to ash. As the rain falls tonight, imagine the streets of Kunming in those dark years, where the sound of footsteps could mean death. Yang Qianyang's story is a reminder that the line between protector and predator is thin, and once crossed, it leads only to ruin. Who is he, in the end? A man wronged by the world, or a monster born from his own choices? The shadows don't answer, but they never forget. Part 2, the Wells Gray Provincial Park Murders. In the summer of 1982, Wells Gray Provincial Park in British Columbia, Canada, was a sanctuary of untouched beauty. Towering pines stretched toward the sky, their needles whispering in the breeze, while crystal-clear streams carved paths through rugged valleys. It was a place where families came to escape the clamor of city life, to breathe the crisp air and find solace in nature's embrace. For the Johnson and Bentley families, it was the perfect setting for a camping trip. A chance to bond, to laugh, to make memories that would last a lifetime. Bob Johnson, 44, and his wife Jackie, 41, packed their daughters Janet, 13, and Karen, 11, into their car, joined by Jackie's parents, George and Edith Bentley, both in their 60s S. Their RV, loaded with supplies, rumbled along the park's winding roads, a symbol of adventure and togetherness. But as they set up camp in a remote clearing, they had no idea they were being watched. The wilderness, so vast and serene, hid a predator, one whose desires would turn their haven into a graveyard. The Johnsons and Bentleys were an ordinary family, bound by love and simple dreams. Bob, a hard-working mechanic, cherished these rare escapes with his wife and girls. Jackie, warm and nurturing, planned every detail of the trip, from campfire meals to stargazing nights. George and Edith, retired and sprightly, relished spoiling their granddaughters with stories and treats. Janet and Karen, full of youthful energy, scampered through the woods, their laughter echoing across the campsite. and they were a picture of joy, unaware that their every move was being tracked by a pair of eyes hidden in the shadows. The park, with its endless trails and secluded corners, was a hunter's paradise. Not for game, but for something far more sinister. August slipped by, and the family's absence went unnoticed at first. Summer vacations were long, after all, and Wells Gray was far from the reach of telephones or neighbors. But when Bob failed to return to work on August 23, his employer grew uneasy. Calls to the Johnson home went unanswered, and a knot of worry tightened in the community. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, were alerted, and a search began. One that would test the limits of hope and Wells Gray was vast. Spanning over 1 million acres, its dense forests and rugged terrain swallowing secrets with ease. Search teams fanned out, helicopters buzzed overhead, and volunteers combed the trails, calling out names that echoed unanswered. Days turned to weeks, and the park, once a symbol of peace, began to feel like a tomb. On September 13, a breakthrough came, but it was not the one anyone had prayed for. A hiker stumbled across a burned-out car in a remote clearing, its metal frame twisted and blackened by fire. The stench of charred remains hung heavy in the air. Police arrived, their faces grim as they peered inside. 6 bodies, reduced to ash and bone, lay within. 2 adults in the front, 4 in the back. Forensic experts were summoned, their gloved hands sifting through the wreckage. Dental records and fragments of clothing confirmed the worst. Bob, Jackie, George, Edith, Janet, and Karen were gone. But this was no accident. Bullet wounds pierced the skulls, each shot precise, deliberate. The fire had been set to erase evidence, but it couldn't hide the truth. This was murder, cold and calculated, and the killer had left no witnesses. The RCMP launched a full-scale investigation, but the crime scene offered little. The car, a Chrysler, was registered to the Johnsons, its contents reduced to cinders. The remote location suggested the killer knew the park's hidden corners, someone local or familiar with its trails. The RV, a key piece of the puzzle, was missing, leading police to suspect it had been stolen. A possible motive. A nationwide alert went out, with descriptions of the RV plastered across newspapers and radio broadcasts. Theories swirled. Was it a robbery gone wrong, a drifter passing through, or something personal tied to the family's past? George Bentley, a retired businessman, was briefly considered a suspect, but his gentle demeanor and the brutality of the crime quickly ruled him out. The police were grasping at shadows, and the case grew colder with each passing day. October 1983 brought a flicker of hope. A park ranger, patrolling a trail less than 19 miles from the murder site, spotted a burned-out RV hidden in a thicket. It was the Johnsons', its interior gutted by flames. The discovery shattered the theft theory. Why burn the RV so close to the crime? The killer hadn't fled. He'd stayed near, taunting the authorities with his arrogance. Forensic teams scoured the wreckage, but fire had erased most clues. A single bullet casing overlooked by the flames hinted at a handgun, but it wasn't enough. The RCMP shifted focus to the locals, canvassing nearby towns for anyone who knew the park's back roads. Whispers pointed to David Shearing, a 24-year-old with a rap sheet for theft and a reputation for odd behavior. Shearing lived on the park's edge, a loner who roamed the trails with a rifle slung over his shoulder. His name kept surfacing, and the police decided to pay him a visit. Shearing's home was a cluttered shack, its walls lined with hunting trophies and tools. He greeted the officers with a nervous smile, his eyes darting as they asked about the murders. He claimed ignorance, saying he'd been working construction during August 1982. But inconsistencies crept into his story. Neighbors recalled seeing him near the park during the family's trip, and a witness reported him trying to repair a bullet hole in his truck. The RCMP leaned harder, bringing him in for questioning. Shearing's composure cracked under pressure, his voice trembling as he spun alibis that unraveled with each probe. After hours of interrogation, he broke. The truth, when it spilled out, was more horrific than anyone could have imagined. Shearing confessed to stalking the Johnson and Bentley families from the moment they arrived. He'd watched them from the trees, his binoculars catching every laugh, every tender moment. His motive wasn't money or revenge. It was something far darker. Shearing harbored violent fantasies, his desires fixated on Janet and Karen, the young sisters whose innocence drew him like a moth to flame. He had planned the murders with chilling precision, choosing a night when the family was asleep in their camp. Armed with a .22 caliber rifle, he crept into the clearing, his heart pounding with anticipation. The adults, Bob, Jackie, George, and Edith, were his first targets. He shot them in their sleep, their bodies slumping without a sound. The girls, woken by the noise, froze in terror. Shearing spared them, but not out of mercy. For days, he held Janet and Karen captive in a hidden cabin, his depravity unleashed in acts too vile to recount. The sisters, trapped in a nightmare, endured unimaginable horrors. When Shearing grew tired of his game, he ended their lives with the same cold efficiency. He loaded all 6 bodies into the Chrysler, doused it with gasoline, and set it ablaze. Believing the flames would erase his sins, the RV too was burned to cover his tracks, left just miles away. In a final act of hubris, Shearing thought he'd outsmarted the world, but his arrogance was his undoing. The bullet casing, the witness accounts, the phone trace, they all pointed to him, and his confession sealed his fate. The trial, held in 1984, was a spectacle of grief and outrage. Shearing, his face blank, pleaded guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder. The courtroom wept as details emerged. The sisters suffering a wound that refused to heal. He was sentenced to life in prison with no parole for 25 years, a punishment many felt was too lenient. The family's loved ones packed the gallery, their sobs mingling with the Shearing, unmoved, was led away, his eyes fixed on some distant point, as if the weight of his crimes hadn't touched him. In 2008 and 2021, he applied for parole. Each attempt met with fury from a public that saw him as a monster beyond redemption. He remains behind bars, his name a curse in the annals of Wells' Gray murders left scars that time couldn't erase. The park, once a haven, became a place of whispers, its trails avoided by those who knew the story. For the Johnson and Bentley families, the laughter of that summer was silence forever, their legacy one of loss. Who was David Shearing? A product of isolation, a man twisted by his own desires, or something else? Something the shadows refuse to name. As the rain falls tonight, picture that quiet campsite, the fire's glow fading into darkness. What drives a man to destroy such innocence? The answer lies buried in Wells Gray, where the trees still whisper of secrets untold. Part 3, Brett Ryan and the Toronto Massacre. In the summer of 2016, Toronto's Scarborough neighborhood was a patchwork of suburban calm. Tidy lawns, children's laughter, and the hum of evening barbecues. It was the kind of place where families thrived, where secrets were tucked behind closed doors, hidden beneath smiles and polite nods. The Ryan family fit this mold perfectly, or so it seemed. Susan Ryan, a devoted mother in her 60s, raised 4 sons in a modest 2-story home on Lawndale Road. Her boys, Christopher, Alexander, Lee, and Brett, were her pride, each carving their own path in a world she'd fought to make safe for them. But beneath the surface of this ordinary family, a storm was brewing, one that would erupt in a cascade of blood and betrayal. At the center of it all was Brett Ryan, a man whose life was a house of cards, trembling under the weight of his own lies. Brett, born in 1980, was the second eldest, a quiet boy with a quick mind and a shadow of melancholy that clung to him like a second skin. Growing up, he was the dependable one, good grades, a knack for computers, and a smile that disarmed those around him. But beneath this facade, Brett battled demons. Depression, insidious and unrelenting, gnawed at him through his teens, leaving him adrift in a sea of self-doubt. By his mid-20s, the pressures of adulthood, bills, expectations, the need to prove himself, pushed him to a breaking point. In 2007, at 26, Brett made a choice that would set him on a collision course with tragedy. He began robbing banks. These weren't the heists of Hollywood, all bravado and gunfire. Brett's crimes were calculated, almost theatrical. He donned disguises, an elderly man's wig, a fake limp, a cane to sell the act, and slipped into Toronto's banks with a chilling calm. He'd pass a note, demand cash, and vanish before anyone could blink. No violence, no threats, just a ghost in plain sight. From February to August 2008, he hit 8 banks, pocketing $28,000, 0 cents. A fortune to a man drowning in debt. But the cameras were watching. A surveillance tape caught a glimpse of his face, a crack in his carefully crafted mask. By August, the police had their man. Brett was arrested, his secret life exposed to a family that had never suspected a thing. The trial was swift, the verdict unyielding. Brett pleaded guilty, sentenced to 5 years in prison. For Susan, the news was a gut punch. Her boy, the one she'd raised with love and sacrifice, was a criminal, yet she stood by him, visiting him behind bars, believing in redemption. Brett's brothers, too, rallied around him, their loyalty a testament to the bonds Susan had forged. Prison was a crucible for Brett, a place where shame and isolation burned away the last vestiges of his old self. Released in 2012, he emerged a changed man, or so he claimed. The world outside was less forgiving. Jobs were scarce for an ex-con, and the stigma of his crimes clung to him like damp rot. Brett, once the golden son, was now a pariah, scraping by on odd jobs and borrowed time. That same year, tragedy struck the Ryan family again. Bill, Susan's husband and the boy's father, died suddenly, leaving a void that deepened Brett's despair. Amid the grief, a flicker of hope appeared in the form of Kristen Baxter, a kind-hearted woman who saw past Brett's scars. Kristen, unaware of his criminal past, at first fell for his quiet charm and earnest promises. When Brett confessed his history, she stayed, believing in the man he wanted to be. Their love blossomed, a lifeline in a sea of loss. By 2015, Brett proposed, and Kristen said yes. The wedding was set for the following year, a lavish affair that promised a fresh start. But Brett's life was a lie, and lies have a way of unraveling. To Kristen, Brett was a success, a university student on the cusp of a tech career, a man with a future. In reality, he dropped out of school, forging transcripts and job offers to maintain the illusion. His bank account was empty, his debts mounting, and the wedding's cost loomed like a guillotine. Susan, ever the vigilant mother, sensed something amiss. She confronted Brett, demanding the truth. He deflected, spinning tales of internships and scholarships, but Susan wasn't fooled. She dug deeper, uncovering his deceptions, and delivered an ultimatum. Tell Kristen everything, or she would. For Brett, this was more than a threat. It was the end of the world he'd built. Shame, fear, and desperation collided, igniting a plan so monstrous it defied comprehension. For August 25, 2016, the Ryan home on Lawndale Road was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, expectant. Susan was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her mind on her sons. Christopher, 38, the eldest, was visiting, his gentle presence a comfort. Alexander, 29, the youngest, lounged in the living room scrolling through his phone. Lee, 33, was out but expected back soon. Brett arrived that afternoon, his face a mask of calm. In his bag, hidden beneath a jacket, was a crossbow, a weapon as silent as it was deadly. He'd bought it weeks earlier, telling himself it was for sport, but the truth was darker. The crossbow was his escape, a tool to silence the voices threatening to expose him. The argument began innocently enough. Susan, her voice firm but loving, pressed Brett about his lies. "You need to tell Kristen," she said, her eyes searching his. Brett's composure cracked, his voice rising in denial. Christopher, sensing the tension, stepped in, trying to mediate. It was a mistake. Brett's rage, bottled for years, erupted. He retrieved the crossbow, his hand steady as he loaded a bolt. Susan barely had time to scream before the first shot struck her chest. Pinning her to the wall, she collapsed, her lifeblood pooling on the linoleum. Christopher lunged, desperate to protect his mother, but Brett was relentless. Another bolt tore through Christopher's throat, and he fell, gasping beside Susan. Alexander, alerted by the commotion, rushed into the kitchen. He froze, his mind struggling to process the scene. His mother and brother dead, his brother wielding a weapon like some avenging demon. Brett didn't hesitate. He grabbed a brick from the counter, a remnant of a home repair, and struck Alexander's skull with savage force. The youngest Ryan crumpled, his phone clattering to the floor. The house was silent now, save for Brett's ragged breathing and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. Lee arrived moments later, stepping into a nightmare. Brett, his eyes wild, swung the brick, catching Lee's shoulder. Lee stumbled, pain searing through him, but instinct took over. He fled, pounding on a neighbor's door, his cries for help shattering the suburban calm. Police swarmed Lawndale Road. their sirens a jarring contrast to the evening's stillness. They found Brett inside, the crossbow discarded, his hands stained with blood. Susan, Christopher, and Alexander were gone, their bodies a testament to his son's unthinkable betrayal. Lee, injured but alive, recounted the horror, his voice breaking as he described Brett's transformation. Brett didn't. He sat, head bowed, as if the weight of his actions had finally crushed him. In the interrogation room, he confessed, his words a monotone litany of guilt. "I couldn't let her tell, Kristen," he said, as if that explained the carnage. "I couldn't lose everything." The investigation peeled back the layers of Brett's life, revealing a man trapped by his own deceptions. Detectives uncovered the forged documents, the mounting debts, the crossbow purchase traced to a local sporting goods store. Kristen, devastated, learned the truth in a police station, her dreams of a future with Brett shattered. The media descended, dubbing the case the Toronto Massacre, a label that captured the brutality, but not the heartbreak. Susan's friends spoke of her unwavering love for her sons, Christopher's quiet kindness, Alexander's infectious humor. Lee, the sole survivor, withdrew from the spotlight, his scars both physical and emotional. The trial, held in 2017, was a somber affair. The courtroom, packed with mourners, buzzed with disbelief. How could a son, a brother, commit such an act? Prosecutors laid out the evidence, the crossbow bolts, the brick, the premeditation evident in Brett's purchase and planning. The defense argued diminished capacity, citing Brett's depression and the pressure of his lies. He snapped, they claimed, painting a picture of a man pushed beyond reason, but the jury saw through the plea. The crossbow wasn't an impulse, it was a choice, each bolt a deliberate act of erasure. On June 15, 2017, Brett was convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, sentenced to life with no parole for 25 years. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read, his face a blank slate, as if the man he'd been had died with his family. Toronto grappled with the aftermath, the Ryan home a grim landmark in a city unaccustomed to such violence. Susan's garden, once vibrant, withered under neglect, a metaphor for the family's loss. Kristen moved away, her trust and love broken. Lee, haunted by survivor's guilt, sought solace in therapy, his brother's faces etched in his dreams. The crossbow, an archaic weapon in a modern world, became a symbol of Brett's desperation. A tool that severed bonds meant to last a lifetime. Why did he do it? Was it shame, fear, or a darkness that had always lurked within him? The rain offers no answers, only the steady drum of questions unanswered. As you lie there tonight, imagine the Ryan home on that fateful evening, the flicker of kitchen lights casting shadows on a family unaware of the storm within their midst. Brett Ryan's story is a warning. Lies, left unchecked, can grow into monsters, and the ones we love most are often the first to fall. What drives a man to destroy his own blood? The shadows hold the truth, but they speak only in whispers. Part 4, The Bever Family Massacre. In the summer of 2015, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, was a sleepy suburb, its streets lined with tidy ranch-style homes and the hum of air conditioners battling the July heat. It was a place where neighbors waved, where kids rode bikes until dusk, where life unfolded in predictable rhythms. At 2799 South Hickory Avenue, the Bever family lived in a sprawling house that seemed to embody the American dream. David Bever, 52, and April, 44, raised their 7 children with love and discipline, balancing work and faith in a tight-knit unit. Their kids, Daniel, 12, Christopher, 7, Victoria, 5, Crystal, 13, Autumn, 2, and the eldest, Robert, 18, and Michael, 16, filled the home with laughter and chaos. To the outside world, they were a model family, devout and devoted. But behind the closed doors of their home, a darkness was growing, one that would erupt in a massacre so brutal it would scar Broken Arrow forever. David and April were pillars of their community. David, a tech consultant, worked long hours to provide for his large family, his quiet demeanor masking a fierce devotion to his kids. April, a stay-at-home mom, homeschooled the children, instilling values of faith and hard work. The younger Bevers were typical kids. Daniel loved video games. Christopher collected action figures. Victoria danced around in princess dresses. Crystal dreamed of being a writer, and Autumn, the baby, was the family's joy. But Robert and Michael, the eldest, were different. Tall, lanky, and withdrawn, they moved through the house like shadows. their eyes fixed on screens, their minds drifting to places no one could reach. The brothers, once close to their siblings, had begun to pull away, their bond with each other tightening into something secretive, something dangerous. The Bever home was a fortress of isolation, not by design, but by circumstance. Homeschooling kept the children apart from peers, their social world confined to family and church. Robert and Michael in particular retreated into a digital realm, spending hours on computers, immersed in violent video games and dark corners of the internet. They stumbled across stories of infamous killers, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooters, whose 1999 rampage left 13 dead and a legacy of terror. To the brothers, Columbine wasn't a tragedy, it was a blueprint. They devoured forums glorifying mass shooters, their fascination morphing into obsession. Robert, the leader, was charismatic in his own way, his sharp intellect twisted by a hunger for power. Michael, quieter but fiercely loyal, followed his brother's lead, their shared dreams growing ever darker. By early 2015, the brothers' isolation had festered into a plan they called the Mission. They wanted to be remembered, to eclipse Columbine with a killing spree that would shake the world. Their target wasn't a school, but something closer, something personal, their own family. The Bevers, in Robert's eyes, were a burden, a chain holding him back from greatness. He and Michael began to see their parents and siblings as obstacles, their love replaced by a chilling detachment. They spent months preparing, their bedroom a war room of twisted ambition. They ordered knives online, combat blades with serrated edges designed for killing. They stockpiled ammunition, body armor, and a stolen handgun, their purchases hidden in plain sight. The brothers recorded videos, chilling manifestos where they boasted of their legacy, their faces lit by the glow of a laptop, their voices eerily calm. July 22, 2015 began like any other day in the Bever household. David was at work, April was teaching the younger kids, and the air was thick with summer's languid heat. Robert and Michael moved through the house with purpose, their plan now in motion. They'd chosen tonight for the massacre, the culmination of months of plotting. Around 11 p.m., the house was quiet, the younger children asleep, April reading in the living room. Robert approached her, his demeanor casual, a knife concealed behind his back. "Mom, can you help me with something?" he asked, his voice steady. April, trusting, followed him to the kitchen. It was a trap. Robert lunged, the blade slicing into her throat. April's scream pierced the night, waking the house, but it was too late. Michael joined in, his own knife flashing, and together they stabbed April over 30 times, her body collapsing in a pool of blood. David, alerted by the noise, rushed to the scene. He fought desperately, grappling with Robert, but the brothers were relentless. They stabbed him 28 times, his strength no match for their fury. The younger children, woken by the chaos, stumbled into a nightmare. Daniel, 12, tried to hide in his room, but Michael cornered him, slashing his throat with surgical precision. Christopher, 7, and Victoria, 5, were next, their small bodies no defense against the blades. The brothers moved like machines, their faces blank, their hands steady. Crystal, 13, fought back, clawing at Robert's face, but a knife to her stomach dropped her to the floor. Autumn, the 2-year-old, was spared, left crying in her crib, a witness to the carnage. Crystal, bleeding heavily, managed to crawl to a phone and dial 911. Her voice, weak but defiant, reached the dispatcher. "Help! They're killing us!" The call cut off as Robert found her, dragging her to the basement, believing her dead. But Crystal was a fighter. She clung to life, her wounds severe but not fatal. The brothers, unaware of her survival, moved to the next phase of their plan. They loaded a car with weapons, intending to drive to a nearby school for a second massacre. But the police were already en route, sirens cutting through the night. Officers stormed the house, their flashlights illuminating a scene of unimaginable horror. Blood-smeared walls, bodies strewn across the floor, and Autumn's cries echoing from her crib. Robert and Michael fled into the woods behind the house, their grand plans crumbling. Police dogs tracked them within hours, finding them huddled in the underbrush, their clothes stained with their family's blood. They surrendered without a fight, their bravado gone, their faces pale in the glare of police lights. At the station, Robert was defiant, boasting of his mission, while Michael, shaken, began to crack. Crystal rushed to the hospital, survived, her testimony a key to unlocking the brothers' motives. Autumn, unharmed, was taken into protective custody, her future uncertain. The Bever home, once a place of love, was now a crime scene, its walls bearing witness to a family's annihilation. The investigation revealed a chilling portrait of the brothers' descent. Detectives found their bedroom littered with evidence: knives, ammunition, body armor, and a laptop filled with manifestos. The videos played in court showed Robert and Michael laughing as they planned their legacy, their words a twisted echo of Columbine's killers. They'd intended to kill their family, then attack a school, hoping to amass a body count that would make history. Crystal's survival was a miracle, her courage a beacon in the darkness. She recounted the brothers' growing distance, their obsession with violence, and the chilling moment Robert had looked at her, knife in hand, and said, "This is for the greater good." The community of Broken Arrow reeled, struggling to comprehend how two boys could turn on their own blood. David and April were mourned as loving parents, their younger children remembered for their innocence. Neighbors left flowers at the house, but the tributes couldn't erase the stain of what had happened. The media, drawn to the case's horror, dubbed it the Beveridge Family Massacre, a label that captured the scale but not the heartbreak. Psychologists weighed in, pointing to the brothers' isolation, their immersion in violent media, and the echo chambers of the internet. Was it nature or nurture? A perfect storm of neglect and obsession, or a darkness born within them? The answers were as elusive as the brothers' motives. The trial, held in 2016, was a crucible of grief and justice. Robert, 18 at the time of the crime, faced the harshest scrutiny. Prosecutors painted him as the mastermind, a cold-blooded killer who'd orchestrated the slaughter. His defense argued he was a product of his environment, a teen warped by isolation and mental illness. Michael, 16 during the murders, was portrayed as a follower, manipulated by his older brother. If Crystal's testimony was the trial's heart, her voice trembling as she described the betrayal, the pain, the loss of everyone she loved. The courtroom wept, but Robert showed no remorse, his eyes fixed on some distant point, as if detached from the consequences. On August 9, 2016, Robert was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder, sentenced to life without parole. Michael, tried as a juvenile, pleaded guilty to the same charges, receiving life with the possibility of parole after 38 years. The sentences, while severe, felt hollow to those who'd lost so much. Crystal, now in foster care, faced a long road to healing, her scars a testament to her survival. Autumn, adopted by a loving family, would grow up knowing only fragments of her past. The Beaver home was sold, its new owners scrubbing away the bloodstains, but the memories lingered, a ghost that refused to fade. Broken Arrow changed after that night. The suburb, once a haven, felt tainted, its residents wary of the darkness that could lurk behind any door. The case sparked debates about homeschooling, internet radicalization, and the warning signs of troubled youth. Robert and Michael, now in separate prisons, remain enigmas. Robert writes letters claiming he's found faith, while Michael keeps silent, his thoughts locked away. What drove them to such evil? Was it the allure of infamy, the weight of isolation, or a spark of madness that no one saw? The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reminder of the lives lost, the questions unanswered. As you drift toward sleep, picture the Beaver home in those final moments, the flicker of a lamp, casting shadows on a family unaware of the monsters within. The Beaver brothers sought immortality through blood, but all they left was pain. What turns a child into a killer? The shadows know, but they speak only in whispers, carried away by the endless rain. Part 5, Matsunaga Futoshi. In the early 1980s, Kitakyushu, Japan was a city of steel and ambition, its skyline a blend of smoky factories and quiet residential streets. It was a place where tradition met modernity, where families worked hard to carve out a future. The Matsunaga family was a cornerstone of this world. Their tatami mat business, a symbol of craftsmanship passed down through generations. Futoshi Matsunaga, born in 1961, was the heir to this legacy. A young man with sharp features and a disarming smile. To those who knew him, he was charming, quick-witted, a boy destined for greatness. But beneath the surface, Futoshi was a storm waiting to break. A predator whose hunger for control would leave a trail of broken lives and a family annihilated in one of Japan's most chilling crimes. Futoshi's childhood was one of privilege but not peace. Spoiled by his parents, he grew up with a sense of entitlement, his whims indulged, his tantrums ignored. By his teens, he was a bully, his charm a weapon he wielded to bend others to his will. School was a stage for his manipulations, Teachers overlooked his misdeeds, classmates fell under his spell. Yet there was a darkness in him, a need to dominate that simmered beneath his polished exterior. When he inherited the family business at 20, it was a chance to prove himself. Instead, it became a crucible for his worst impulses. Futoshi cut corners using cheap materials and hiring untrained workers, demanding impossible sales quotas. Failure meant punishment, beatings, electric shocks, a reign of terror that drove employees to fraud, swindling even their own families to meet his demands. The business thrived, but not through skill. Futoshi's wealth grew on the backs of fear and deception, his bank accounts swelling while his employees crumbled. His personal life was no less turbulent. Married young, he was a neglectful husband, his eyes wandering to a figure from his past. Junko Ogata, a soft-spoken kindergarten teacher he'd known in high school. Junko, born into a respected family, was everything Futoshi wasn't. Kind, principled, yet she was vulnerable, her gentle nature a magnet for Futoshi's charisma. In 1981, he pursued her with relentless intensity, his letters and calls a mix of flattery and obsession. Junko, flattered but hesitant, fell into his orbit, unaware of the trap being set. Their affair began in secret, stolen moments in hotel rooms where Futoshi's charm masked his control. He promised her a future, whispering lies about leaving his wife, but his words were a cage. When Junko's family discovered the relationship in 1984, her father, a man of honor, demanded it end. Futoshi, unfazed, turned the confrontation into a game. He manipulated Junko's parents, exploiting their fear of scandal in a society where reputation was everything. His abuse escalated, physical beatings, branding his name into Junko's skin, forcing her to degrade herself to prove her loyalty. When Junko's mother confronted him, Futoshi assaulted her in a remote hotel, shaming her into silence. Junko, trapped by shame and fear, spiraled. In 1985, she attempted suicide, her wrist slashed in a cry for escape. She survived, but Futoshi's grip tightened. He coerced Junko to cut ties with her family, threatening to leak explicit photos he'd taken. Broken, she joined his company as an accountant. Her life, now an extension of his will. By 1992, the business was crumbling under fraud accusations and debts of 90 million yen, $580,000, 0 cents. Futoshi fled with Junko to Kushu, a fugitive weaving a new web of deceit. He targeted vulnerable women, charming them with promises of love, only to drain their savings and discard them. One victim, M. Aoi Tata, lost 11.8 million yen, and her daughter, who died in a suspicious fall. M, unable to endure Futoshi's abuse, drowned herself in 1994. Another, Kumio Tada, a real estate worker, was extorted and confined with his daughter Akiko. Kumio died in 1996 from heart failure induced by relentless beatings, his body desecrated and dumped at sea under Futoshi's orders. Futoshi's cruelty knew no bounds. He manipulated another woman, Miss B, abusing her until she fled in 1997, leaving her daughter behind. When Junko tried to escape, Futoshi lured her back by threatening her family, extorting 63 million yen with fabricated crimes. He relocated the Ogata family, Junko's parents, sister Rieko, brother-in-law Shuya, and their children Aya and Yuki, to a cramped apartment in Kushu, turning it into a prison. Futoshi's rules were draconian. No speaking, no eye contact, only obedience. He used electric shocks to enforce compliance, wiring victims to a makeshift device that delivered agonizing jolts. The family, broken by fear, developed a chilling obedience, a form of Stockholm syndrome that made them complicit in their own destruction. From December 1997 to June 1998, Futoshi orchestrated a series of murders that defied comprehension. He began with Junko's father, Kazuo, manipulating Junko into electrocuting him during a punishment session. Kazuo's death was ruled a heart attack, but it was only the beginning. Next was Junko's mother, Shizumi, strangled by Junko under Futoshi's orders, her body disposed of in a river. Ryoko, Junko's sister, was forced to kill her husband Shuya with her hammer, her hands trembling as Futoshi watched. Ryoko's children, Aya and Yuki, were the final victims, smothered by their mother in a twisted act of obedience. Futoshi directed each killing, his voice calm, his eyes gleaming with control. The bodies were dismembered, dissolved in acid, or scattered at sea, leaving no trace. The apartment became a house of horrors, its walls stained with the echoes of screams. Futoshi's power was absolute, his victims reduced to shells of themselves. Junko, once a beacon of kindness, was his enforcer, her soul eroded by years of abuse. Akiko, Kumio's daughter, endured unspeakable torment, her spirit crushed under Futoshi's sadism. Yet it was Akiko who would break the cycle. In 2002, after years of captivity, she saw a chance, a moment when Futoshi's guard was down. She fled to a police station, her body bruised, her voice shaking as she spilled the truth. The officers, stunned, launched an investigation that would unravel one of Japan's most horrific cases. The police raided Futoshi's apartment, finding a scene of squalor and fear. Junko, hollow-eyed, was arrested alongside him. The lack of bodies posed a challenge, but Akiko's testimony, coupled with forensic traces, bloodstains, chemical residues, built a damning case. Junko, after months of counseling, confessed, her words a torrent of guilt and coercion. Futoshi, defiant, denied everything, his charm now a hollow mask. The investigation uncovered 7 murders, though some believe the toll was higher. The Ogata family's annihilation shocked Japan, a nation unaccustomed to such calculated evil. The media dubbed Futoshi the Puppet Master, a moniker that captured his ability to bend others to his will. The trial, beginning in 2005, was a spectacle of horror and heartbreak. Prosecutors detailed Futoshi's methods: electric shock, psychological torment, the systematic destruction of a family. Akiko's testimony was the trial's heart, her voice steady as she recounted years of abuse. Junko's role divided the courtroom: victim or accomplice. Her defense argued coercion, painting her as a woman broken by Futoshi's control. Futoshi, unrepentant, smirked through the proceedings, his arrogance a final insult to his victims. On September 28, 2005, both were sentenced to death. A verdict met with muted relief. In 2007, Junko's sentence was reduced to life imprisonment, the court acknowledging her manipulation. Futoshi's death sentence was upheld in 2011, his execution a distant promise in Japan's slow justice system. Yataki's shoe was forever changed, the Matsunaga name synonymous with terror. The Ogata family's home, once filled with love, was demolished, its site left barren. Akiko, scarred but free, rebuilt her life in anonymity, her courage a light in the darkness. Futoshi's crimes raised questions that linger. How does a man become a monster? Was it greed, power, or a void where a soul should be? The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reminder of the lives erased, the bonds shattered. As you lie in the dark, imagine that Kushu apartment, its silence broken by the hum of an electric shock. Futoshi Matsunaga sought to control everything, but in the end, his empire of fear crumbled. What drives a man to destroy a family, to turn love into a weapon? The shadows hold the answer, but they speak only in the quiet of the night. Part 6, Mount Rugu Murder. In the autumn of 2014, Mount Rugu in Taoyuan City, Taiwan, was a haven for those seeking solace from the bustle of urban life. Its rolling hills, draped in mist and dotted with wildflowers, offered a quiet escape, a place where the wind carried only the rustle of leaves and the hum of distant cicadas. On October 7, 3 friends, their laughter mingling with the drone of remote-controlled planes, climbed the mountain's trails, their devices soaring above the treetops. It was a routine outing, a chance to lose themselves in the freedom of the skies. But fate had other plans. As one plane veered off course, crashing into a muddy hollow, the men trudged over to retrieve it. What they found wasn't wreckage, but something far more sinister. A human leg bone, half buried in the earth, its surface tangled with strands of dark hair. The discovery sent a chill through the group. They stood frozen, the weight of what they'd found sinking in. This wasn't an animal, nor a relic of some forgotten accident. It was human, recent, and wrong. They called the police, their voices trembling as they described the scene. Within hours, Mount Rugu was no longer a sanctuary but a crime scene, its tranquility shattered by the flashing lights of patrol cars and the measured steps of forensic experts. Xiao Kaiping, a seasoned forensic investigator, led the excavation, her team working through the night to unearth the remains. The skeleton was female, estimated to be 35 to 60 years old. Dead for roughly 6 months. Fractures on the skull told a grim story. Blunt force trauma followed by strangulation. This was no accident. This was murder. Deliberate and brutal, hidden in a place where secrets were meant to stay buried. The Taoyuan police launched a full-scale investigation, but the body offered few clues. No clothing, no jewelry, no identification, just bones, and a mystery that deepened with each passing hour. Xiao's team noted recent dental work, a crown on a molar suggesting the victim had access to modern care. The hair, long and dark, hinted at an Asian woman, but the mountain's isolation meant no witnesses, no footprints, no easy answers. The case gripped Taoyuan, a city unaccustomed to such grim discoveries. Early theories pointed to a missing person case that had haunted the region for months. Mrs. Lee, a wealthy 50-year-old woman who vanished in April 2014. Her younger boyfriend, a man with a questionable past, had disappeared around the same time, and $33,000, 0 cents, had been withdrawn from her account. The media latched onto the story, painting a tale of greed and betrayal. But DNA tests shattered the theory. Mrs. Lee was alive. Her boyfriend cleared by an airtight alibi. The investigation stalled, the skeleton a silent enigma. Xiao, undeterred, turned to the dental evidence, canvassing clinics across Taoyuan for records of recent crowns. It was tedious work, a needle in a haystack, but forensic science thrives on patience. Meanwhile, the police broadened their search, combing missing persons reports for women matching the victim's profile. Days turned to weeks, and Mount Rugu, once a place of peace, became a symbol of unease, its trails avoided by locals who whispered of ghosts. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A dental assistant flipping through records recalled a patient, a woman in her 40s, vibrant but troubled, who'd visited in early 2014. Her name was Young Milan, a 41-year-old saleswoman, mother of 3, reported missing in August 2014. Milan's life was a tapestry of contradictions. By day, she was a dedicated mother, her children the center of her world. By night, she was a woman chasing excitement, her marriage strained by years of routine. In 2013, Milan's behavior had shifted. She began staying out late, her phone buzzing with messages from unknown men. Neighbors noticed a revolving door of visitors, businessmen, younger suitors, men who lingered too long. Her husband, a quiet factory worker, turned a blind eye, his love for their children outweighing his suspicions. But Milan's world was spiraling, her affairs a dangerous dance with men who offered wealth and attention. One stood out, Hang Jinye, a 45-year-old businessman whose success masked a volatile temper. Jinye, married with a teenage son, was smitten with Milan, showering her with gifts, jewelry, cash, promises of a life beyond her modest home. Their relationship was a fire, intense and consuming. Jinhei rented a villa in Taoyuan, a private retreat where he and Milan could escape prying eyes. But Milan wasn't exclusive. She juggled multiple lovers, her charm a magnet for men willing to pay for her time. Jinhei, possessive and proud, grew jealous, his text to Milan shifting from affection to accusation. By July 2014, their affair was fracturing. His demands for loyalty met with her defiance. On August 2, Milan, after a night of drinking, arrived at Jinhei's villa. Her laughter slurred, her guard down. What happened next would unravel in fragments, pieced together by detectives determined to find the truth. The police, armed with Milan's identity, turned their focus to her inner circle. Her husband, devastated, admitted to their strained marriage but had an alibi. He'd been working a night shift on August 2. Friends described Milan's reckless lifestyle, her affairs a poorly kept secret. Jinhei's name surfaced repeatedly, his wealth and temper a red flag. Detectives visited his villa, a modern sprawl of glass and stone, and found it eerily pristine. But forensic teams don't trust appearances. Luminol revealed faint blood traces on the living room floor, invisible to the naked eye. A search of Jinhei's car uncovered more hair strands matching Milan's, caught in the trunk's lining. The evidence was mounting, but Jinhei was a step ahead. He'd fled Taoyuan, his whereabouts unknown, his phone off the grid. The manhunt for Jinhei spanned weeks, his face plastered across Taiwan's news. His wife, questioned by police, claimed ignorance, her voice trembling as she described a marriage strained by his infidelity. Their son, a lanky 17-year-old, was less composed, his answers vague, his eyes avoiding contact. The police leaned harder, sensing a crack in the family story. On September 20, a tip led to Jinhae's arrest in a coastal town. His swagger gone, his face haggard. In interrogation, he crumbled, his confession a torrent of guilt and deflection. The night of August 2, he said, was a blur of rage and regret. Milan had arrived drunk, haunting her other lovers, mocking his devotion. An argument erupted, words turning to blows. Jinhee claimed she'd attacked him, a lie the evidence didn't support. He'd struck her head with a heavy vase, then strangled her as she gasped, her body going limp in his arms. Jinhae's son, present that night, became an unwilling accomplice. Terrified, he helped his father wrap Milan's body in a tarp and drive to Mount Rugu. They dug a shallow grave under cover darkness, the mountain's silence, their only witness. Jinhae insisted it was an accident, a moment of passion gone wrong, but the forensics told a different story. Deliberate blows, a calculated cover-up. His wife, though aware of the affair, was cleared of involvement, her shock genuine. The son, a minor, faced juvenile charges, his role limited to aiding the disposal. The villa, once a symbol of Jinhae's success, was sealed, its walls holding the ghosts of that fatal night. The trial, held in December 2014, was a clash of narratives. Prosecutors painted Jinhae as a jealous predator, his wealth no shield against his insecurity, the blood traces, the hair, the skull fractures, all pointed to premeditation, they argued. Jinhae's defense claimed provocation, portraying Milan as a manipulative femme fatale who'd pushed him to the edge. The courtroom, packed with Milan's family, seethed with grief. Her children, now motherless, sat in silence, their father's testimony a plea for justice. Jinhae's son, testifying under immunity, described his father's panic, his own fear as they buried the body. The jury, unmoved by Jinhae's tears, delivered a verdict, guilty of murder. On December 15, he was sentenced to 15 years and 8 months, ordered to pay $230,000, 0 cents to Milan's family. His son received juvenile supervision, his future uncertain. Tao Yuan mourned Milan, her vibrant spirit reduced to a cautionary tale. Her husband rebuilt his life for their children, their home a shrine to her memory. Mount Rugu, once a place of refuge, became a grim landmark. Its trails whispering of betrayal. The case sparked debates about infidelity and its consequences, the thin line between love and obsession. Jinhae, behind bars, remains a figure of contempt, his wealth meaningless in the face of his crimes. What drove him to kill? Was it jealousy, pride, or a darkness that lurked beneath his polished exterior? The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reminder of Milan's laughter, silenced forever. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the misty slopes of Mount Rugu, the earth hiding a secret until fate intervened. Young Milan sought freedom and love, but found only death. What turns passion into poison? The shadows know, but they speak only in the quiet of the night. Part 7, Monterey Park shooting. In the spring of 2021, Monterey Park, California was a bustling enclave east of Los Angeles, its streets alive with the hum of Chinese-American culture. Neon signs glowed above dim sum restaurants, markets brimmed with fresh produce, and the air carried the sizzle of street food. It was a community built on hard work and hope, a place where immigrants like Jingyi and Wang Lingling had come to chase the American dream. The couple, both in their late 30s, had arrived from China a decade earlier, their hands clasped around dreams of a better life. They settled in Monterey Park, raising 2 daughters in a modest apartment, their days filled with the grind of survival. But beneath the surface of their marriage, cracks were forming, cracks that would widen into a chasm, culminating in a massacre that would shock the city and shatter a family forever. Jingyi and Lingling were a study in contrast. Lingling was the fire, outgoing, ambitious, the family's breadwinner. She worked long hours at a massage parlor, her charm and work ethic earning steady tips that kept the family afloat. Jing, quieter and more reserved, struggled to find his place in America. A former factory worker in China, he faced language barriers and a job market unkind to immigrants without credentials. By 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic had stripped him of even temporary work, leaving him to care for their daughters aged 8 and 10, while Lingling toiled. The role reversal grated on Jing, his pride bruised by a culture that valued his wife's contributions over his own. In their cramped apartment, tensions simmered, unspoken resentments piling like kindling waiting for a spark. Lingling's life at the massage parlor introduced her to a world beyond Jing's reach. Her clients, many of them affluent, showered her with attention, their flattery a balm for the exhaustion of her days. Among them was Lei Xiaoming, a charismatic businessman in his 40s whose frequent visits to the parlor became more than professional. Xiaoming, also Chinese-American, was married but restless, his wealth and confidence a stark contrast to Jing's quiet struggle. By late 2020, Lingling and Xiaoming's flirtations had crossed into an affair, their meetings growing bolder. Lingling, emboldened by her independence, stopped hiding her feelings. She'd return home late, her phone buzzing with messages, her laughter tinged with defiance. Jing, relegated to the role of homemaker, saw the change in her, his suspicions hardening into certainty. The marriage, once a partnership, became a battlefield. Jing confronted Lingling, his voice low but sharp, demanding answers. She didn't deny the affair, her words cutting deeper than any blade. "I'm the one keeping us alive," she'd say, her eyes daring him to challenge her. Jing's anger festered, fueled by cultural expectations of masculinity and the shame of being overshadowed. Friends noticed his withdrawal, his once warm demeanor replaced by a brooding silence. He began tracking Lingling's movements, checking her phone, noting her late nights. In his mind, Xiaoming wasn't just a rival, he was a thief, stealing the life Jing had fought for. By early 2021, Jing's love for Lingling had twisted into something darker, a possessiveness that whispered of violence. On April 5, 2021, the Golden Dragon, a popular Korean barbecue restaurant in Monterey Park, was alive with the clatter of plates and the hum of conversation. It was a place where families gathered, where the scent of grilled meat mingled with laughter. Lingling and Xiaoming sat at a corner table, their hands brushing, their smiles unguarded. They'd chosen the Golden Dragon for its familiarity, a place where they could blend into the crowd. But they weren't alone. Jing had followed them, his car parked across the street, his eyes fixed on the restaurant's glowing windows. In his jacket, concealed beneath a scarf, was a modified handgun, its magazine loaded with hollow-point bullets designed to kill. Jing had bought it months earlier, telling himself it was for protection in a city that felt increasingly foreign, but the gun was no shield. It was a promise, a vow to reclaim what he'd lost. At 7:42 p.m., Jing stepped into the Golden Dragon, his face a mask of calm. The restaurant was crowded, waiters weaving through tables, the air thick with steam and chatter. He moved with purpose, his steps measured, his gaze locked on Lingling and Xiaoming. No one noticed the danger. Not the families sharing platters, not the staff juggling orders. Jing stopped at their table, his presence a sudden shadow. Lingling looked up, her smile fading, her eyes widening with recognition. Xiaoming, sensing the tension, began to rise, but Jing was faster. He drew the gun, its barrel glinting under the fluorescent lights. The first shot struck Lingling in the chest, a hollow palm tearing through her heart. She slumped forward, her glass of water spilling across the table. Xiaoming lunged, his hands raised, but Jing fired again. 3 shots to the chest, each one precise. Lethal. Xiaoming collapsed, his body crumpling beside Lingling's, their blood pooling on the tile floor. Screams erupted, diners scrambling for cover, tables overturning in the chaos. Jing didn't flinch. He stood over his victims, his gun lowered, his face unreadable. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The restaurant a tableau of horror, Jing a statue of vengeance. Then he turned and walked out, his steps as deliberate as when he'd entered. Outside, he slid into his car and drove into the night. The Golden Dragon's lights fading in his rearview mirror. Inside, patrons huddled on their tables, their phones lighting up with 911 calls. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Lingling and Xiaoming were gone. Their affair ended. In a hail of bullets, their lives, a warning of love, turned lethal. The Monterey Park Police Department descended on the scene, their radios crackling with urgency. Witnesses described a lone gunman, Asian, late 30s, his demeanor eerily calm. Security footage confirmed Jing's face clear as day, his gun raised without hesitation. The police traced the car to Jing's apartment. But he was gone. The unit empty save for a note to his daughters. "I'm sorry. I love you." The manhunt stretched across state lines, Jing's face plastered on news broadcasts, his name a synonym for tragedy. On April 7, Border Patrol agents apprehended him at the U.S.-Mexico border, his car packed with clothes and cash, his eyes hollow with defeat. In custody, Jing didn't resist. I had to do it, he said, his voice flat, as if the act had drained him of everything human. The investigation peeled back the layers of Jing's unraveling. Detectives found a cache of evidence in his apartment, more firearms, ammunition, a journal filled with rants about Ling Ling's betrayal. Text messages to friends revealed his obsession, his threats to end it all growing darker with each week. Surveillance footage from the massage parlor showed Jing lingering outside, watching Ling Ling and the gun, modified for maximum damage, spoke of premeditation, each bullet a choice made long before that night. Ling Ling's co-workers described her as vibrant but reckless, her affair an open secret. Xiaoming's wife, devastated, spoke of his charm and his flaws, a man who'd strayed too far from home. The daughters, now in their grandparents' care, were shielded from the details, their world upended by a father's rage. Monterey Park grappled with the aftermath, the Golden Dragon, a grim landmark in a community that prided itself on harmony. The restaurant closed for weeks, its staff haunted by the memory of that night. Customers returned slowly, their laughter subdued, the corner table left empty as if cursed. The case sparked conversations about immigrant pressures, the weight of cultural expectations, the strain of financial survival, the isolation of a new land. Jing's actions, some argued, were rooted in a toxic blend of machismo and desperation, a man undone by his inability to adapt. Others saw Ling Ling as a victim of her own ambition, her independence a challenge Jing couldn't accept. Both narratives, though, missed the deeper truth. Love, when twisted, can become a weapon sharper than any bullet. The trial, held in Los Angeles County Superior Court, began in October 2024, a somber reckoning for a city still healing. The courtroom was packed. Ling Ling's family, Xiaoming's widow, community leaders, all seeking answers. The prosecutors built a meticulous case, presenting the security footage, the journal, the ballistics matching Jing's gun to the fatal shots. They painted him as a calculating killer, his every move deliberate, his remorse an afterthought. The defense, grasping for leniency, argued emotional distress, citing Jing's unemployment, his cultural dislocation, and the sting of betrayal. They played videos Jing had recorded before the shooting, his voice breaking as he spoke of his daughters, his shame, his fear of losing everything. I couldn't let her destroy me, he'd said, tears streaming down his face. The jury, tasked with weighing justice against tragedy, deliberated for 3 days. On November 1, 2024, they delivered their verdict. Guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder, Jing stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the floor as the judge sentenced him to life without parole. Ling Ling's brother, speaking for the family, called for healing, his voice choked with grief. Xiaoming's widow left in silence, her forgiveness a burden too heavy to carry. The daughters, absent from the proceedings, would grow up with only memories of a mother's warmth and a father's betrayal. Jing, now a number in a prison cell, became a cautionary tale, his name whispered in Monterey Park as a reminder of the cost of obsession. The city moved on, but the scars remained. The Golden Dragon reopened, its tables filled again, but the corner where Ling Ling and Xiaoming died held a quiet reverence. Community leaders organized vigils, their candles flickering against the night, a plea for unity in a fractured world. The case lingered in the collective memory, a question mark etched in blood. What drives a man to destroy the one he loves? Was it pride, betrayal, or a darkness that grew in the silence between them? The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reflection of Ling Ling's laughter, Xiaoming's charm, and Jing's regret. As you lie in the dark, imagine the golden dragon's glow the moment before the shots rang out. Jing Yi sought to reclaim his honor, but all he found was ruin. What turns love into a bullet? The shadows hold the truth, but they speak only in the stillness of the night. Part 8. Toronto International Student Murder. In the winter of 2017, Toronto, Canada was a city of contrasts. Gleaming skyscrapers towering over snow-dusted streets, where the pulse of opportunity drew dreamers from across the globe. For international students, it was a beacon, a place to chase education and a future beyond their homelands. Wang Hai, a 19-year-old from Shanghai, was one such dreamer. Arriving in 2016 to study at a language center, Hai was bright, ambitious, and eager to prove him. His parents, middle-class professionals, had sacrificed much to send him abroad, their hopes pinned on his success. But Toronto was more than a classroom for Hai. It was a stage for reinvention, a city where he could shed the weight of expectations and embrace a life of his own making. Yet within this freedom lay a trap, one that would ensnare him in a love triangle and lead to a murder that would shake the city's international student community. Hai was no ordinary student. Charismatic and generous, he had a knack for drawing people in, his laughter filling the cramped study halls of the language center. But his charm came with a price. Hai lived beyond his means, his allowance stretched thin by a hunger for status. He bought designer clothes, dined at upscale restaurants, and gifted lavish presents to friends, all funded by lies. He told his parents tales of academic success, begging for extra money to cover tuition and book. In reality, he'd funneled over $100,000, 0 cents of their savings, into his lifestyle, a secret he guarded with meticulous care. At the center of this facade was Tan Jeti, a 20-year-old fellow student from Guangzhou, whose beauty and ambition matched Hai's own. Jeti, with her sharp wit and guarded smile, became the object of Hai's devotion, their romance a whirlwind of late-night talks and extravagant dates. Jeti, though, was no innocent. She thrived on attention, her social media filled with glamorous photos and cryptic posts hinting at a life of luxury. Hai showered her with gifts, jewelry, handbags, a $5,000 0 cents watch that gleamed on her wrist. Their relationship, passionate but volatile, was the talk of the language center, their arguments as public as their affection. By late 2016, cracks appeared. Jeti grew restless, her eyes wandering to others who could match Hai's generosity. Enter Fan Biao, a 21-year-old student from Beijing whose muscular frame and fiery temper set him apart. Biao, a former athlete, was studying business, his confidence bordering on arrogance. He and Jeti met at a campus event, their chemistry instant, her laughter drawing him like a moth to flame. Biao, unlike Hai, had no wealth to flaunt, but his intensity was its own currency, and Jeti was captivated. The love triangle took shape in the winter of 2016, its edges sharp with jealousy and pride. Hai, sensing Jeti's distance, doubled down, his gifts more extravagant, his pleas more desperate. Jeti, playing both men, reveled in the attention, her loyalty a prize neither could fully claim. Biao, possessive and quick to anger, saw Hai as a rival to be crushed. His texts to Jeti filled with disdain for the spoiled rich kid. Hai's apartment, a modest rental in Toronto's Chinatown, became the stage for their rivalry. On February 6, 2017, the tension boiled over. Hai invited Jeti over, hoping to salvage their relationship. She arrived, but not alone. Biao was with her, his presence a deliberate provocation. The air crackled with hostility as Hai demanded answers, his voice rising, his hands clenched. Jeti caught between them, fueled the fire, her words pitting one against the other. The argument escalated into violence, a chaotic blur of shouts and fists. Hai, smaller but scrappy, landed a punch on Biao's jaw, drawing blood. Biao, enraged, tackled Hai, his strength overwhelming. Chatati screamed, her voice lost in the fray. As the two men grappled on the floor, neighbors, alerted by the noise, banged on the walls, but the fight spilled into the hallway, a trail of overturned furniture marking their path. Biao's fists found Hai's face, each blow a release of pent-up fury. Hai, dazed, stumbled back into the apartment, his nose bleeding, his vision blurring. Jeti, panicked, pulled Biao away, and for a moment, it seemed the storm had passed. The trio parted, bruised and shaken, with Biao and Jeti retreating to her dorm, leaving Hai alone to nurse his wounds. But the peace was a lie. Biao's rage hadn't cooled, it had deepened, his pride wounded by Hai's defiance. Jeti, shaken but manipulative, stoked his anger, recounting Hai's insults, her tears a calculated push. Around midnight, Biao decided to return, Jeti at his side, their intentions unclear but heavy with malice. Hai, still in his apartment, was cleaning up, his head throbbing from the earlier fight. He didn't hear the door creak open, didn't see Biao's shadow until it was too late. Biao attacked without warning, his fists relentless, targeting Hai's head with savage precision. Hai fought back, his nails clawing at Biao's face, but he was no match. A final blow, a heavy object, possibly a lamp, crushed Hai's skull, sending him to the floor, unconscious. Blood pooled beneath him, his breathing shallow, his life slipping away. Jeti, standing frozen, watched as Biao checked Hai's pulse. He's still alive, Biao muttered, his voice trembling. Instead of calling for help, Jetty hesitated, her fear of consequences outweighing her humanity. They fled, leaving Hai to die alone, the apartment silent save for the drip of blood on the hardwood. Hours later, a neighbor, disturbed by the earlier noise, knocked on Hai's door. Finding it ajar, they peered inside and saw the horror. A young man, lifeless, his face battered beyond recognition. The police were called, their sirens piercing the early morning of February 7, 2017. Paramedics confirmed Hai's death, his skull fractures, and brain trauma too severe for survival. Toronto's Chinatown, usually vibrant, felt hushed, the weight of tragedy settling over the community. The Toronto Police Service launched a swift investigation, their focus on the International Student Network. Hai's phone revealed a flurry of texts with Jetty and threatening messages from Biao, painting a clear picture of the love triangle. Witnesses from the Language Center described the trio's volatile dynamic, their public spats a prelude to violence. Security footage from Hai's building captured Biao and Jetty entering and leaving twice that night, their faces unmistakable. Biao was arrested within days, his knuckles bruised, his story crumbling under interrogation. He admitted to the first fight but claimed the second was self-defense, a lie the evidence didn't support. Chetty, questioned separately, played the victim, her tears convincing but her timeline inconsistent. The police, lacking direct evidence of her involvement in the fatal attack, released her, though suspicion lingered. The investigation uncovered Hai's double life, his lies to his parents, the $100,000 0 cents he'd siphoned, the pressure to maintain his facade. His parents, devastated, flew to Toronto, their grief compounded by the betrayal of their trust. The Language Center, a hub for international students, became a focal point, its halls buzzing with rumors and fear. Biao's background revealed a history of aggression, his temper a known issue among peers. Jetty's role, though legally ambiguous, drew scrutiny. Had she orchestrated the conflict? Or was she a bystander caught in the chaos? Forensic evidence sealed Biao's fate. Blood on his shoes matched Hai's, and DNA under Hai's nails confirmed the struggle. The lamp, recovered from the apartment, bore traces of Hai's blood, its weight consistent with the fatal blow. Toronto's international student community reeled. The murder, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Hai's death sparked debates about the pressures of studying abroad, financial strain, cultural isolation, the temptation to reinvent oneself at any cost. His parents, speaking through a translator, mourned their son's ambition, their savings gone, their dreams shattered. Jetty, though not charged, faced social exile, her reputation tarnished by whispers of complicity. Biao, defiant at first, grew silent as the case built against him, his bravado no match for the weight of evidence. The city, known for its safety, grappled with the realization that even its brightest corners could harbor darkness. The trial, held in October 2019, was a clash of justice and privilege. Biao, represented by Brian Greenspan, a renowned defense attorney, faced charges of second-degree murder. Greenspan argued that Hai's death was a tragic accident, a fight gone too far, with no intent to kill. The prosecution countered with the forensic evidence, the security footage, and the brutality of the attack, painting Biao as a jealous predator. Joey, called as a witness, delivered a tearful account, her role minimized, her memory conveniently vague. The courtroom, packed with Hai's supporters, simmered with outrage, their signs demanding justice. Hai's parents, present throughout, wept as photos of their son's battered body were shown, their loss a wound that refused to heal. The jury, swayed by Greenspan's eloquence, delivered a controversial verdict. Guilty of manslaughter, not murder. On October 25, 2019, Biao was sentenced to 5 years with parole possible after 1 year due to time served. The leniency sparked fury, particularly among Toronto's Chinese community, who saw it as a failure of justice. Protests erupted outside the courthouse, banners reading "Justice for Wong Hai" fluttering in the wind. Greenspan's reputation as a legal wizard grew, but for Hai's family it was a hollow victory. Biao, released in 2021, returned to China, his future uncertain. Jetty, unscathed by the law, faded from public view, her story a footnote in a tragedy that claimed one life and scarred countless others. Toronto moved on, but the echoes lingered. The Language Center tightened security, its students more cautious, their dreams tempered by Hai's fate. His parents returned to Shanghai, their home a shrine to a son they'd never truly known. The case became a cautionary tale, a warning of the dangers lurking in ambition and rivalry. What drove Biao to kill? Was it jealousy, pride, or a moment of rage that spiraled beyond control? The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reflection of Hai's laughter, Jetty's tears, and Biao's regret. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that Toronto apartment, the flicker of a lamp before the final blow. Wang Hai sought a new life, but found only death. What turns love into a battlefield? The shadows hold the truth, but they speak only in the silence of the night. Part 9, Ganjo Clothing Store Murder. In the autumn of 2011, Ganjo City in Jiangsu Province, China was a vibrant hub of commerce and community. Its streets buzz with the chatter of shoppers, the glow of neon signs, and the clatter of bicycles weaving through evening traffic. Tucked along a busy avenue was the Lotus Blossom Clothing Store, a modest shop where racks of dresses and neatly folded sweaters drew a steady stream of customers. Jiang Yunu, 27, was the heart of the store, her warm smile and keen eye for fashion making her a favorite among locals. Married to Ma Ming, a reserved but devoted husband, Yunu was a woman on the cusp of a new chapter. 2 months pregnant with their first child, her dreams filled with the promise of motherhood. But on November 17, 2011, the Lotus Blossom became a crime scene, its racks overturned, its floor stained with blood, and Yunu's life extinguished in a murder that would unravel a web of secrets and suspicion. Yunu was a daughter of Ganjo, born to a working-class family who'd instilled in her a fierce work ethic. After marrying Ma in 2010, she poured her energy into the clothing store, its shelves a canvas for her creativity. Ma, a mechanic, supported her ambition. Their modest apartment, a haven of shared hopes. Yunu's pregnancy, discovered just weeks before, was a quiet joy, a secret they'd begun to share with family. On the evening of November 17th, the store was quieter than usual, the autumn chill keeping customers away. Yunu worked alone, arranging displays, her humming a soft counterpoint to the hum of the city outside. Ma was at home, expecting her to close up by 9 p.m. But when 10 p.m. passed and Yunu didn't return, a knot of worry tightened in his chest. He called her phone, the unanswered rings echoing his growing dread. Ma rushed to the Lotus Blossom, his breath visible in the cool night air. The store's lights were on, but the door was locked, the interior eerily still. Peering through the glass, he saw chaos, racks toppled, a mannequin fallen, and Yunu's body crumpled near the second-floor stairs. Her face was bruised, her neck marked by livid bruises, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Ma's scream shattered the silence, drawing neighbors and passersby. He fumbled for his phone, dialing 110, China's emergency line, his voice breaking as he begged for help. Police and paramedics arrived, their sirens cutting through the night, but Yunu was beyond saving. She'd been strangled, her body bearing signs of a violent struggle. And something more disturbing, evidence of post-mortem assault, a violation that spoke of a killer's depravity. The Ganjo City Police Department sealed the Lotus Blossom, transforming it into a labyrinth of clues. Forensic teams swept the scene, their gloved hands cataloging every detail. Yunu's body revealed a grim story, male DNA under her fingernails suggesting she'd fought her attacker. Bruising on her neck consistent with manual strangulation, and a used condom wrapper on the floor, hinting at the assault. Her necklace and phone were missing, but the cash register was untouched, ruling out robbery as a primary motive. A pair of slippers, oddly misplaced near the stairs, suggested Yunu had been caught off guard, her routine disrupted by an intruder. The store's security camera, frustratingly, had been disabled weeks earlier, leaving no footage to guide the investigation. The police faced a puzzle with too many pieces and no clear picture. Yunu's life became the investigation's lens. She was well-liked, her customers loyal, her disputes rare. Ma, devastated, was the first suspect, his presence at the scene raising questions. He claimed he'd been home all evening, a claim corroborated by a neighbor who'd seen him at 8 p.m. His DNA didn't match the evidence, and his grief seemed genuine, though his calm demeanor struck some as odd. The police dug deeper, uncovering Yunu's complex relationships. She'd been entangled with Wang Xingwu, a former lover who'd threatened her after their breakup in 2010. Wang, a volatile man with a history of harassment, had scratches on his neck when questioned, but his DNA cleared him, and his alibi, a late-night card game, was solid. Another lead pointed to Jang Yuen Kai, a debtor who owed Yunu money. Yuen Kai admitted visiting the store that night, kissing Yunu's neck before she ejected him, but his DNA didn't match and his timeline held. The investigation stalled, the condom wrapper a nagging enigma. It suggested a sexual motive, but Yunu's life showed no signs of such encounters. The police canvassed Ganjo's underbelly, questioning local drifters and known offenders, but the leads fizzled. The community, shaken by the brutality, demanded answers, their vigils outside the lotus blossom a sea of candles and tears. Yunu's parents, shattered, spoke of her kindness, their unborn grandchild, a loss too heavy to bear. Ma! Retreating into silence, faced whispers of suspicion, his motorcycle ride near the store that night fueling rumors. The case seemed destined for the cold files, a tragedy without resolution, until a chance discovery shifted everything. On December 10, 2011, a janitor cleaning the store's balcony found a used condom overlooked in the initial suite. Forensic analysis revealed semen matching the DNA under Yenunu's nails, and on her neck, a breakthrough that reignited the investigation. The DNA didn't belong to Ma, Wang, or Yuen Kai, pointing to an unknown suspect. The police expanded their search, running the sample through local databases, their hope tempered by the case's complexity. A tip from a bus driver offered a new thread. A young man, Jiang Hao, had been seen arguing with a woman resembling Yunu on a bus in October 2011. Hao, 23, was a drifter with no ties to Yunu, his life a blur of odd jobs and petty theft. When questioned, he was nervous, his answers evasive, his hands trembling as he denied knowing Yunu. Hao's DNA, collected via a warrant, was a match, a chilling confirmation that turned the case on its head. Under interrogation, Hao's defiance crumbled, his confession a torrent of guilt and confusion. On November 16, 2011, he boarded a bus where Yunu was a passenger. Convinced she'd pickpocketed his wallet, he followed her to the Lotus Blossom. His anger fueled by the loss of his meager savings, he confronted her after closing, demanding his money. Nunu, confused, denied the theft, her calm infuriating him. In a rage, Hal attacked, strangling her with his hands, her struggle no match for his strength. The post-mortem assault, he claimed, was a moment of panic, a twisted attempt to erase his crime. He took her phone and necklace, fleeing into the night, believing he'd left no trace. The police, stunned by the randomness, verified Hao's story. The wallet theft was unproven, likely a delusion born of his paranoia. The condom, a grim detail, suggested Hao's intent, though he insisted it was spontaneous. The slippers, the disabled camera, the untouched cash, all pointed to a crime of impulse, not planning. Hao's arrest on December 15, 2011 brought relief, but little comfort. Unu's death tied to a stranger's grudge felt senseless, her life a casualty of chance. The trial, held in 2012, was swift. Prosecutors presented the DNA, Hao's confession, and the physical evidence, painting him as a predator driven by misplaced vengeance. His defense argued mental instability, citing his transient life, but the jury was unmoved. Hao was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, a verdict upheld in China's rigorous system. Ganjo mourned Yunu, the lotus blossom shuddered, its sign of fading memory. Ma, haunted by guilt, left the city, his future uncertain. Yunu's parents turned her room into a shrine, her ultrasound photo a bittersweet relic. The case left lingering questions. Why the scratches on Wang's neck? What was Ma's motive, truly random, or did a deeper connection go unseen? The community, seeking closure, held memorials, their flowers piling outside the store. The murder sparked discussions about safety, the fragility of small businesses, and the unseen dangers in a bustling city. Hao, awaiting execution, remains a cipher. His rage, a spark that consumed 2 lives. The rain falls heavy tonight, each drop a reminder of Yunu's smile, her dreams, her unborn child. As you lie in the dark, imagine the lotus blossom's quiet glow, the moment before a stranger's anger changed everything. Jiang Yunu sought a simple life, but found only death. What turns a fleeting grudge into murder? The shadows hold the truth, but they speak only in the stillness of the night. As the rain deepens its rhythm, it carries away the echoes of the stories we've shared tonight. 9 tales of human frailty, where ambition, love, and rage wove threads of tragedy. From the blood-soaked streets of Kunming to the quiet trails of Wells Gray, from Toronto's fractured homes to Ganjo's silent shop, These shadows of the past reveal a truth as old as time. The heart is a fragile thing, capable of both creation and destruction. Yang Tiongyang's greed, David Shearing's depravity, Brett Ryan's shame, the Bever brothers' obsession, Matsunaga Futoshi's control, Han Jinhei's jealousy, Jing Yi's betrayal, Fan Biao's wrath, and Jiang Hao's vengeance. Each a mirror to the darkness within us all. Yet, in their wake, we find flickers of resilience, a survivor's courage, a detective's resolve, a community's healing. These stories, though steeped in sorrow, remind us that even in the deepest night, light persists. As you lie there, the rain a soft lullaby. Let these tales linger, not as nightmares, but as warnings. What drives us to destroy? What saves us from the abyss? The answers lie in the choices we make, the secrets we keep, the truths we face. Thank you for joining Shadows of the Past. Until the rain falls again, sleep well, but keep one eye open, for the shadows never truly rest.